This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back, Geek Gab, for Monday, August 19th, 2024. And we want to welcome everybody here who is watching the show. Today we are going to be talking about, let's see, we've got Vampire the Masquerade, we've got Impact Winter, we have got Alien Romulus, and whatever else comes up in the course of the discussion. So, but before we get to all that, if we get to all that, we had some Star Wars news.
Star Wars news. Yeah. What sort of terrible thing did we find out about today?
It was heartbreaking. It was tragic.
As if suddenly you heard millions of Star Wars fans' voices cry out and suddenly stop.
Well, millions of YouTube voices cry out and suddenly stop because YouTubers were making bank. I mean, they were pumping out show after show and getting viewership numbers, the likes of which the world has seldom seen off of this show. And so, all of these channels now are going to have to find something else to talk about because The Acolyte is not getting a second season. So,
Oh no. The one that I barely heard about and nobody watched?
yeah, in fact, I believe the only people who actually watched it were the YouTubers.
When they found out that mocking Star Wars was a great way to get engagement.
I the one guy I like to watch, the Little Platoons. Um, One did long shows about it, but two, he dissected the plot and made story suggestions because that's apparently what his real life job is to work in writing and plotting and stuff. So it wasn't so much mocking the show as it was sort of a story symposium on all of the missed opportunities they had to write a good story with it. And it was actually really educational. I still think I was wasting my time, but I had it on while I was playing video games. So, you know, it's like I wasn't doing much else while it was on.
Huh. Well, I bet that it's chock full of absolute garbage. Um, and it's gone and nobody cares. We wouldn't stoop to so low a level as to farm engagement on Star Wars. You'll notice that I omitted it from the title of today's show.
Actually, I don't think we've ever talked about it. I mean, I didn't watch it at all, so we've certainly never reviewed it. Um, we might have mentioned it in passing, but no, we haven't reviewed stuff
Yeah,
just to
because if we
wait.
did that, we'd have to update our titles to have shocking titles, and I'd have to put a photo of me soy jacking in front of every for every thumbnail for each video. And we here at the Geek
Big,
Gab, we're above that. We're better than that.
you'd have to have big red arrows pointing at circles and stuff.
Yes, we don't do that on the Geek Gab. You guys, frankly, you're lucky that I find a image on the internet that I can use as a good thumbnail.
Really, we're just too lazy to do that with our thumbnails.
It's
And
true.
and and I have watched some garbage in my time, but there are things that I simply will not watch. Uh, they're too painful for me to watch. It's just not worth it. My sanity isn't worth it. I guess maybe if I was making a lot of money off of this, I might do it, but I'm not. So I can reserve the right to not watch really, really terrible shows that are just painful. That's why I didn't watch Velma. I
Oh
was
yeah,
just,
the Mindy Kaling vehicle as an animated
yeah,
Scooby-Doo ripoff.
not my thing. I didn't want to watch it. Didn't
That's
have to watch it.
I don't think that's anybody's thing. Have you ever met a person in your life, either in person or just chatting online, that said, you know what, man, I really like that Mindy Kaling. Her comedy is just exactly my speed. I wasn't meant
Not
to be
even,
particularly harsh against Ms. Kaling. I don't get her appeal, and I don't know who she appeals to.
yeah. So let's see.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, uh, no big news this week unless you're into politics. It's crazy season in the U.S. and we don't talk about politics. So moving on.
Yeah, I really, nope, I'm done. I'm out.
You're done. You're out. Nobody
Yep.
blames you. Hey, uh, I went for a blast into the past and back into the future with my gaming today. I did some new retro gaming the past couple of months, and I thought I'd mention it.
What are you playing?
I've been going back to playing Vampire: The Eternal Struggle. You might recall that game. Based on Vampire the Masquerade collectible card game.
Uh, I
We used
completely
to
misunderstood what you meant when we were talking before the show.
have. Yep. No, I've been playing some originally known as Jihad, changed very quickly for obvious reasons. And no, it's a card game that's been around from the 90s. In fact, uh, it's having its 30th anniversary this year. And
I
though it was, yeah,
I bought one of the first decks from the first printing.
oh, nice.
I don't own it anymore, but I did buy it.
It's such a cool game. It's got uh, great mechanics, cool atmosphere from the 90s era Vampire the Masquerade. Um, the game itself was designed by Richard Garfield, the guy who invented Magic the Gathering, and he invented it to be a multiplayer game. And in that regard, it is uh, miles above Magic the Gathering. It is widely considered the best multiplayer card game ever made. I happen to agree. Uh,
I never I never got to play it much because none of the people who I knew around me wanted ever to play it. I
well,
always
those
felt bad
people are
about that.
wrong. Those people are wrong. You should know.
They were all really really into magic and uh, not vampire. And in fact, I didn't even get to play magic very much because I couldn't afford to play magic because I couldn't afford to buy it.
That was the other beauty of Vampire. The way the game was designed, it didn't have, and it still doesn't really have expensive cards the way Magic the Gathering does. You would buy sealed boosters of cards, and instead of the rare card, the rare card in a pack in Magic is usually the most powerful or versatile card. And the rare card in Vampire is it's usually a card that you really only need one or two of, right? So you're not chasing expensive cards in the same way that you did in Magic. It's much more affordable to play then and now. The
Cool.
Yeah, no, some of the old players got back together. They've been doing like a once a month meeting, and the it was out of print for a few years, but the players group uh, tried to keep the game alive with some fan sets, and they parlayed that into an official sets supported by the new owners of Vampire Paradox. And so the designers are pretty good. The playtesters are great. And yeah, Paradox is Paradox. So if you're not a fan of what they've done with the Vampire IP, you're only going to see a little bit of that in the card game. But, it's still Paradox. But the game, alive and kicking, undead after 30 years, and it's still a great game.
Nice. I don't have any questions. I feel like I have nothing to say about that.
I could go on and on about this game, but you can get back in 2020 they released a new set that sort of coincided with Paradox's release of V5 of Vampire the Masquerade. So if you wanted to play it, you would need to find a few friends, and you could pick up the V5 set, and it comes with 5 decks to start with, and a whole bunch of little counters for use with the game, and it's a pretty cool product.
Yeah, I was so ready to play it. I bought a deck and 20 blood counters. But when they were like little fake gemstones, flat on one side, rounded on the other. I was ready to go, and I never got to play.
Well,
it was heartbreaking, but
that's what it was like getting into CCGs in the 90s.
Yeah, because everybody was playing Magic and nobody was playing like Over the Edge or whatever other. Netrunner, I think, was another one. There was a Star Wars CCG. Everybody had one.
Absolutely.
Like all the MMOs who have come out to try and compete with World of Warcraft. Everybody wants that World of Warcraft money, and all of them have died except for just a few.
Everybody wants that Magic the Gathering money. Ain't gonna happen.
So speaking of vampires,
yes,
I've got an unusual review for the boys today. By we I mean me. I listened to a series of Audible originals. I'd call them audiobooks, except they're not based on books. So they're sort of radio plays. They're fully voiced, which means they've got a voice cast. And like a couple of big name actors are in it. And I should have looked up his name before the show. But you'd absolutely recognize his voice as soon as you hear it because he's been in several big movies. Anyways, it's called Impact Winner, and it starts out really, really strong. So it's got a full voice cast, and then it's got Liam Cunningham is the biggest name I can think of. He was in Game of Thrones. He played Davos Seaworth, who's kind of the old pirate. And then he's been in a bunch of other movies. He was in the 3 Body Problem. If you saw the 3 Body Problem on Netflix, he played the head of the intelligence agency that's investigating it.
Wait, which one is he? I remember seeing the first episode of 3 Body Problem.
The guy who's the head of the intelligence agency. You have Wong from Doctor Strange, and he's like this investigator who's working for a secret government agency.
Yeah.
He has a boss who's an Englishman with a beard, white beard.
Okay.
He's the boss. This actor is the boss.
Who's the boss?
Was a good
The
show.
the only correct answer to that is Tony Danza. Moving on.
Um, so I mean, as soon as I heard his voice, I recognized it because I've seen him, in several things that I've watched. Um, and then they have like Foley. So they have, when doors open, it creaks. They have gunshots. They have all these sound effects that are make the story kind of come alive. So it's an actual, it's basically a radio play,
Radio play. I was about to say.
uh, just in kind of the streaming thing, and it's part of Amazon's deal, their free streaming libraries, or not Amazon. Well, yeah, Amazon, because Audible is owned by Amazon. It's part of their free streaming library. If you have an Audible membership, you can just listen to these. And they've released uh, three big, um, three big sort of episodes so far, and it's still not over. So I don't know if it's going to go to 4 or 5. And it starts off really, really great. What it is about is the Earth is hit by a comet, and the comet causes essentially nuclear winter. So you can never ever see the sun. And vampires in this world are real. And because the sun is blocked out, vampires now can walk all the time during the day, and you can't stop them with daylight. And so vampires have pretty much taken over the earth, and humans that are free live in bunker complexes or remote towns, and they have to stay hidden. They have to, you know, go out and scavenge for goods. So it's very much a post-apocalyptic setting, uh, and there are several different kinds. There are three main kinds of vampires. There's they call them blighters, and they're kind of animalistic, bat-looking things that hunt in packs. So they're kind of, if you can imagine wolves that drink your blood. Uh,
Cool.
and then there are uh, the mid-level guys, which are pretty much normal vampires. They look human. They have teeth. And then they have sort of uh, the anointed ones who are really, really powerful and can do the shape shifting and all the super magical things um, that Dracula could do. So in this world, vampirism is not a blade style disease. It's very much a mystical, magical thing. And there are other forms of uh, magical stuff going on, like soothsaying and seeing the future and prophesying is a real thing. Um, and and other stuff like that. So, and I don't want to tell what other stuff is. If you decide to listen to it, I don't want to spoil it. So the first episode starts off really strong and it's great. They establish this world. It's really interesting. They have strong characters. But by the end of the first episode, it the postmodern rot kind of sets in, and then it rules it for the second and third episodes. They have strong male characters in the beginning, but by the end of the first episode, all the male characters are either dead, become a bad guy, or become totally useless. And
Sure.
from then on in, they're really all the main characters are women, and all the males are pretty much useless or evil. The only really frightening masculine characters are all bad guys. And all the heroes, all the strong masculine heroes are women. And it really ruins what had started off as a great series. At least it ruined it for me. Because we talked about this. We talked about this in connection with a movie. I don't remember if it was last week or the week before that. But I just am. And then, like, at least twice, people on Twitter for the last couple of days have been talking about the She-Hulk series. And in the She-Hulk series, Tatiana Maslany gives this speech about how hard life is to be a woman to Bruce Banner, who in all of these Hulk movies tried to commit suicide. He had a really horrible life. The love of his life, who is Black Widow, threw herself off a cliff and committed suicide to save the universe. He's had all of these horrible, grief-stricken things going on. And Tatiana Maslany, who works as a lawyer, who has a great job, who is, basically has a really cushy life, is talking about how hard she has it because men are catcalling her and how dangerous life is for her and stuff when she's She-Hulk. And that sort of I'm a woman, I'm victimized speech is so common nowadays. And this series, Impact Winter, does it twice, where they just have the woman get up and make this speech when it makes no sense for the characters to feel this way or to say these things. And it's obvious it's just the people making it wanting to make some kind of feminist point about the real world, wanting to, get real world virtue signaling credits for it. And that too kind of ruined it. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's got good drama. It's got good action. The plot twists are interesting. The characters are smart. They don't do dumb things, generally speaking. And when they do misguided things, you can see why they do it. It's perfectly in character because human beings make mistakes. And these vampires are still human beings. They still have, they're alienated from humans, but they still have their own desires and their own weaknesses and their own psychological traits that lead them to make mistakes. And so it's not bad. It's just poisoned with postmodernism, and it's a little tiring. I'm still going to watch it because I've spent so much time on it. I want to see how I'm going to listen to it. I've spent so much time on it, and I really do want to see how the story ends. I just wish that they hadn't made it whiny. And they hadn't made it all about how victimized women are in the real world. Because first world women don't need to have fiction talk about out of character, out of context of this world, everybody who's a human is struggling. Everybody. You don't need, it's not particularly harder if you're a woman. It didn't make any sense. men have it supremely hard in this world. It was just inserted in there for political reasons, and you did not need the politics in it. So yeah, it 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 just was some sour notes in there. Um,
That's
so
too
I
bad.
I really could have done without it.
But I was gonna ask how the vampire stuff was, but it mostly focuses on the survivors then, the
No, actually,
humanity.
by the time you get to the second one, um, it's changed focus to like vampires, vampire politics, and um, trying to find out what happened with Impact Winter. When is it going to stop? How to stop the vampire predations and things like that. So you begin to find out uh, what's going on in the larger world that you don't see. Like the first one is set almost entirely in this one, I'll call it a resistance community. And the second one comes out into the wider world uh, of the vampires. Um, and then the third one, moves on into like upper level politics of the vampires.
Interesting. Does it
So,
so it returns to more of a like a traditional soap opera structure?
yeah,
I mean, because that's all vampire shows are. Soap opera with extra steps. Have you ever seen um, that old soap opera Dark Shadows?
I have not.
Bro,
I have
I
heard
th-
about it.
I think you can get all the episodes for free. I want to say Tubi, but it is it is a show about a vampire and all the the problems and things that he gets into. But it is pure soap opera. It was done in the 70s or late 60s into the 70s, I think, and it is quintessential. Low production values. It was all done on television. They didn't
That's the
even
one with
bother.
that's the one with Barnaby Collins, right?
Yeah, that's the character's name, Barnaby Collins. Like people make mistakes with their lines. People make a mistake with their blocking on camera. Um, and you can have a whole episode, all the episodes are filler. Like it's puffed air. It's like the eating a bowl of puffed rice. You're eating like 80% air because in an episode something will happen and all the drama is around which characters know about the current event and when and how. And so something happens and then the rest of the episode is spent with other one character telling another character what happened. You can go a whole episode and maybe one thing happens the entire episode. Um, but the actors ham it up, particularly Barnabas. It's a hoot, especially if you're not used to soap operas. Absolute hoot. Um,
This is admittedly nothing like that because in terms of in terms of like what's going on, uh, it's more like a spy movie. Um, in terms of action where you'll have intrigue and you're talking to people and trying to infiltrate things and then somebody asks you to go to a meeting and then stuff happens there and there's sudden betrayals and sudden reversals of fortune and uh, so there's always something happening. Any conversations that are there are uh, strictly needed to for something to happen between two characters. They change the dynamics between two characters, and then they move on. There's nothing that's filler. It doesn't just drag on. I never felt bored with the material. I just felt that some of it was tiresome because of of the politics of it. So it's not badly done. It's not boring. It's just tiresome.
Yeah, I mean that sums up just about all the entertainment we consume nowadays.
I think, yeah, a lot of the entertainment we consume nowadays is both boring and tiresome.
Yeah. Well, that's not a good start to the movie we're here to talk about today, because I was meaning to see it and I didn't realize it opened today, and I sure hope
So,
it isn't boring or tiresome.
um, Alien Romulus. Imagine if you took every other Alien movie that has ever been made, not Alien versus Predator, just the Alien movies, including Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and chopped them up and dumped them into a salad bowl and shook it really, really well to make a salad, and then ladled some of it onto the plate. And they served you a plate of alien salad. That's what this movie is.
Oh dear.
And it's not bad in that sense. Uh, I
Because
haven't seen the two.
that could be really bad. Like
I
you could
haven't.
see how that would be really bad, right?
Yes. Um, I, Fade Alvarez is the filmmaker, and I haven't seen either of his two previous movies, but he is a skillful director. This is not a bad film. Uh, and the events flow logically from one to another. You're never confused as to why things are happening or why characters are acting the way they are. It all completely makes sense. The script is well thought out. The plotting is well done. And I mention that specifically because so many movies are poorly thought out. Like, you get from one scene to another and you're like, why the heck is this happening? Who did that? It's like, okay, this happened and then that happened. There's no causal link between them. Everything from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie is causally linked. One thing directly links to something else and it all makes sense. So I don't know if that was him or if that was the screenwriters. It doesn't really matter. I just truly appreciated that. It makes sense as a story, and that's really important. Um, they do original things with the aliens that we haven't seen on screen before, and that's cool to see. Uh, and that's important when you're making a new movie in a series. You have to mix it up. You have to bring in something new, and they absolutely did. And the new things they did were really cool, and it worked because you can do new things with the aliens that are absolutely dumb. Um, some of the old things they called back to were absolutely dumb. And you can see why they're in the movie. I don't know if they were under injunction from the studio that they had to include it, because it seems to me they were under orders to, make this as nostalgic as possible to really appeal to people so it would do well.
I
But
even remember that from the trailer. Like they deliberately added parts of the trailer that mimicked scenes from Alien. I'm thinking specifically the initial facehugger attack, and the the impregnation by the alien. Those were featured prominently in the trailer, as if to say, "You guys are gonna get all that alien goodness that you know from Alien."
yeah, and that they even did, they did differently because they have this X-ray wand that lets you see inside your body, and so the woman can use this X-ray wand and see, oh my god, and this is in the trailer, I'm not giving anything away. She can see, oh my gosh, there's this thing inside me. and then freak out about it. And it was an effective moment in the movie, even if it was spoiled in the trailer. So even that they did in a different way. And the way they tried to deal with that when she had the face hugger on her was different than any way anyone has tried to deal with that before in any of the other movies. The way they tried to get the face hugger off of her. And it used tools that they had gotten from previous activities that they were doing. So they had gotten these tools from what they were already doing, and it made sense. All of the things you see on the screen get used later in ways that are kind of surprising, even things you think don't necessarily matter, that are just
Chekhov's
part of the
facehugger.
background. Um, and that was nice. I mean, they really did a good job on the script. It's just some of the things they included are just so painfully dumb. And I hated it. One of the worst things was they have Sir Ian Holm, who is dead, who in the original Alien played Ash the android. And they have another android of that same model aboard the ship. And so they have a computer generated duplication of Ash, just like they had a computer generated duplication of Princess Leia and Grand Moff Tarkin in one of the Star Wars movies. And the
Oh,
technology has not gotten very much better because it looked completely fake. It looked awful. So that wasn't a good part of the movie. Um, the characters are all, young people. The characters are supposed to be people in their late teens. Um, and I didn't really feel much empathy for most of them, or maybe any of them. I and that sounded pretty common. It was a pretty common comment about the movie. um, I'm trying to think of what else to say. Um, it is a skillfully done movie. The actual callbacks got to be kind of tedious, especially when they began quoting earlier movies. That was over the
ooh.
line for me.
Yeah,
Quoting
no.
earlier movies, saying exact lines from earlier movies was just too much. I did not need to hear someone saying, "Get away from her, you bitch."
Oh, that line.
I did not need
No.
to hear that. It didn't add anything to the movie. It didn't make sense in context. Because you can't tell if this alien was male or female. It was completely out of character for the character who said it. It was a clunky line, and it didn't need to be in there. So yeah, that was the direct quotes were over the line, and you didn't need them. Uh, it's supposedly set in between Alien and Aliens. It's like 20 years after Alien and 39 years before Aliens. So, um, yeah, the continuous callbacks get to be a bit much, especially the direct quotes. But it's not a bad movie. Um, it just does too much to try to call back to earlier Alien movies, and it's it does it in a way that uh, that it borrows at least two elements from earlier Alien movies that I absolutely hated. On the other hand, um, the zero G sections were done really, really well, and they were done really, really creatively. And what they do inside those zero G sections is great. I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Um,
I mean,
although
it may seem superficial, but now that you mention it, they didn't do a lot in zero G in the other Alien movies.
no, they did
So
not.
yeah, yeah, just saying that kind of sounds corny and superficial, but if you do something interesting with it, with the story, and have some cool visual effects, then you've actually made something worthwhile.
Yeah, and the characters use the zero G as a tool to accomplish certain goals. And then within that zero G, when it becomes a problem, they figure out ways around the problem of the zero G. It's neat. They show these characters genuinely approaching problems and solving problems within the limits of their capabilities because um, they don't have access to this station that they're on. They don't have the access codes, but they use their ingenuity to get a way around that. And they make these characters clever. They make them resourceful, and you don't see all of these uses of it coming. And I liked that. Now, maybe you will, because I've kind of spoiled it, but I liked that the characters were able to think their way through plot problems. The people who wrote it bothered to set up problems and then bothered to have solutions of those problems in earlier scenes that you don't necessarily notice, but you're like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense.
Cool.
I like it.
Like someone went over the script or made sure that everything that gets paid off has a setup or vice versa.
Yes. Um, yeah. What were we talking about where I complained? It was a series, right? Where I said something like, if you're gonna for most of the series, oh yeah, it was
Oh
Carnival
yeah,
Row,
Carnival Row.
where if you're gonna spend all the season talking about how corrupting this
Blood
seeing the
magic.
future by this type of magic is, you can't just drop that at the end of the series for a sudden happy ending because this character is going evil. Um, and this movie doesn't do that. It's nice. Um, so there's a lot of positive things to say about this movie. Uh, but um, the callbacks got to be a little bit too much, and they picked two dumb things to bring back. I just, yeah. So it's a mixed recommendation. If you like Aliens movies, uh, you'll probably like this one.
Yeah, I mean, Alien, the first one is still probably my favorite horror movie, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I liked Aliens, and believe it or not, I liked the second of the weird ones with Michael Fassbender.
Alien
Not
Covenant.
not Prometheus and Prometheus. I kind of liked Alien Covenant.
Um, I think that's everything I can say about that movie.
Well, it's okay. Um, good popcorn date night movie.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. What else is going on? Um, I want to drastically shift gears because I intended to mention it up front at the start of the show, but I mentioned last week I'm planning and plotting a Cyberpunk 2020
Oh yeah,
Battle
we skipped that.
Bronstein. Yeah, I just briefly mentioned it, and I got some feedback that I say the word Bronstein a lot, and I don't explain it enough. I think it's too much to go into just now, but the idea is that you get together with your friends, and everybody's given a note with a character. That is to say, you have someone with a specific set of um, ideas or abilities and a some kind of a goal, and everybody has different goals, and the goals aren't necessarily they're going to conflict with each other. So you generate a scenario where everybody sort of sits down and you play out that sort of conflict, and it's a largely social experience where you talk to the other players and you try and figure out everybody's secrets, and you try to figure out how to get what you want without giving everybody else exactly what they want, especially if there's a conflict. Um, I know that's all very vague and everything like that. What is that? Does that look like in a cyberpunk scenario? Well, I've been dreaming about doing this for a couple of years now, and similar to what I talked about last week. I played in that Gangbusters game set in 1926 Chicago. Uh, Al Capone, Elliot Ness, all that stuff. Was the game master said, I've kind of wanted to play Gangbusters for years, but it wasn't until we talked about what Bronsteins were and played a few that I had the framework I needed to actually execute the game. So I've had a similar desire, if you will, to run a cyberpunk game like that, that would focus on street level gang warfare. Um, and that's what
Inspired
I'm going to do.
originally, uh, inspired originally by the Dread movie.
Yes, the Dread movie, where you've got a single building and sort of all the gangs are trapped inside, and just to limit the scope, the physical scope of what you can do. So what we're gonna do, I'm taking that and I'm broadening it a bit because Cyberpunk, the game, has a lot of great roles to play. Um, I'm thinking specifically characters like the Corp Man or the media. So if I'm thinking Max Headroom, nowadays it'd be like a YouTube guy who's muckraking and who's always posting news updates on his favorite shtick, right? Not just like the warriors, not just the cyber psychos and the net runners, the hackers, right? Not just those guys. So what I want to do is I want to do in the vein of gangbusters. I want players to be part of a corp or a gang. And let's be honest, corporations are just legally chartered gangs in a lot of cases. Uh, and put them in Night City. I'm going to put all the players in Night City. Everybody's going to have some territory or businesses or secrets to protect or to claim or to fight over, and just put them in the room and let them go. It'd be great to see how the game system handles that. Cyberpunk 2020 is famously a skill-based system. It's very individual character centric. It's very much tuned to conventional style play, but it's also a fast and loose. Combat's very deadly. Making characters is actually pretty quick and easy. Um, you know, it's the dark future. Life on the streets. Life is cheap, uh, but you got to do what you got to do to keep your head, stay in the game. Be able to get your next meal, that sort of thing. I want to put all that in a single game, put everybody in a room, give them a few things to fight over, and see what happens. I've got 2 players signed up for that, and I'm looking for a few more. We're probably going to do it sometime in the next 3 to 6 weeks. Hit me up in the comments, in the chat, on Twitter, whatever. If you want to join me in the dark future, I think it's going to be awesome.
All right.
Now, Warpig, you're more of a Shadowrun guy, right?
I am.
Well,
But
if this Battle Bronze team goes off as well as I think it will, maybe we'll do another one on Shadowrun.
but I think I will join in the Cyberpunk Battle Bronze thing.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. Time and date is to be determined, but we'll set it up. So you can hang out with all of the Geek Gab and play Cyberpunks with us. I'm really excited. I still have to refresh my myself on all the little rules in the game, but I am pumped. Well, that's
Okay.
all I've got. That's all I've got, DW.
I think one of the things that was going on today, there were a couple of things we found out that I wanted to talk about real quick. As sort of the last minute before we sign off. A volume, a Robin Hood book published in 1912 had in it 2 characters who were tubby little men who were half the size of regular men, and they were called Hobbs, Hobbs. Now, and I didn't write down this name, and I should have, so I could give credit to it. It's a book literally called Robin Hood by Henry Gilbert, published in 1912. And they're called Hob of the Hill because they live under a hill. So they're half the size of men. They're called Hob of the Hill, and they are tubby little guys who live in a hill. So this person said that they were assuming that that is part of the folklore that Tolkien drew on when he was creating hobbits. And also that in a different discussion today, there is a poetic, an epic Icelandic poem that talks about a seer who is challenged to list all of the names of every dwarf. And all of the names of the dwarves, and it's called the Voluspa. Odin asks this ancient seeress, a female seer, to list all the names of the dwarves, and every name of the dwarves in The Hobbit are from this poem, including literally Biffer, Boffer, and Bomber, Nori, so on and so forth.
No way.
Yes. So, and I'm not saying anything bad about Tolkien, except that he drew on a vast wealth of many different mythologies to create his worlds. And so it is no surprise that D&D is the same. And I believe this is a quote I wrote down. I believe this is a quote from Bradford Walker, also on Twitter, talking about Tolkien. His elves are from the Fairy Queen. His dwarves are from the Nibelung. His wizards with staves are a subversion of Merlin and other enchanters. His genius is his language, characters, and plot. Being so educated in epics, in epic poems, in epic stories, in mythology, he created something with great and mythic weight. I'm talking about Tolkien now. And his elves weren't the dark, cruel, capricious fae of Celtic, Scottish and Irish myth, where even the good folk were apt as not to do something horrible to you. There were no happy, friendly fae. His elves are more like, they call it prelapsarian man, which is, the perfect nobleman from the dawn of time, Adam. And so, but D&D elves are absolutely not Tolkien elves. And you look at the other things that are in D&D, they're not borrowed directly from Tolkien, except for inspiring maybe half elves, although those appear in other literary sources too. Tolkien elves are tall, noble, warrior poets, whereas D&D elves, are short. They don't follow that same template. So the discussion for the last couple of days is once again between people who think that D&D is exactly the same as Tolkien's Middle Earth, and everybody else who's saying no, it's based on Fritz Leiber, Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and Poul Anderson. This welter of other inspirations, all mixed together. And so, just as Tolkien drew on a wide varieties of works to synthesize his languages and his myths for The Lord of the Rings and for The Hobbit, Gary Gygax drew on a monumental variety of sources to synthesize The Lord of the Rings. To synthesize Dungeons and Dragons. And so you can't say that any one work dominated in creating Dungeons and Dragons. You can't say that any one work was the single template. Um, and I really liked this particular discussion because it drew out a possible inspiration. It seems like a likely inspiration for hobbits. Um, and it also drew out, um, it started with Alex Kursova talking about um, comparing and contrasting Frieren and the characters of Frieren set side by side with the races from the AD&D Player's Handbook. And what I've been saying for 6 years is that period of fantasy in the 80s and 90s, basically everything up to when the Wheel of Time began being published, um, it wasn't Tolkien epic fantasy. It was Gygaxian epic fantasy. And it's Gygaxian epic fantasy because of long swords. Everybody gets long swords wrong because Dungeons and Dragons had long swords wrong. They used the wrong terminology for long swords. Long swords in D&D are not called what historians call long swords. They're a completely different sword. But everybody in fantasy gets long swords wrong. They use D&D long swords. So that's just
Yeah,
one thing to show you.
it is really it's disorienting to go find a YouTube video or whatever of someone doing, watch me learn how to do real European longswords, and it's this massive,
Yeah.
is massive, and they don't wield shields with it, right? It's a more or less a two-handed weapon, and you go, huh? Everything I know is wrong.
Yeah. And that's become embedded in fantasy from Gygax, from D&D. And it was story beats of Tolkien with a Gygaxian setting that inspired that explosion of fantasy, starting with probably the Sword of Shannara and continuing up to basically the start of the Wheel of Time. Um, and so the Wheel of Time marked a shift in epic fantasy to non-Tolkien or non-Gygaxian settings. But for a while there, Gygaxian settings were the thing. So yeah, D&D has had a monumental impact on everybody in the fantasy space. And everybody attributes that to Tolkien when it isn't actually Tolkien. Almost nobody has followed in Tolkien's footsteps because fantasy has been about getting the powerful artifact and using it to defeat the bad guy. Whereas Tolkien was about trying to destroy the bad guy's artifact in order to uh, take his strength away because it'll destroy him. And then later on in postmodern fantasy, it's all about you have the power within, and all you have to do is find the confidence to repudiate all the people who are telling you you can't do it. So I mean, somebody could do like a study of all these works, and of course in Japan, D&D had a much bigger impact. And this is what I've been told. I don't know this firsthand, but D&D had a much bigger impact than in America, to where all their modern manga are sort of they're not straight D&D. They're like takeoffs on D&D, like Frieren and Delicious and Dungeon. They use all these D&D tropes, but they go in different directions. Like Frieren is about an elf who was part of a D&D adventuring party, but she's aged on and most of her party has died off. And now she's wandering around trying to, at least in the beginning, trying to reconnect with the human who grew old and died. And she barely noticed it because she didn't notice a mere 40 years passing or 50 years passing. it was nothing to her, but the human grew old and died, and she suddenly realizes that. And Delicious in Dungeon is about a dungeon crawl, but they're too poor. The adventurers are too poor to buy food to take with them. So they get a cookbook and have to try and cook the monsters. And it's all about these recipes and eating the monsters. It's not really about adventuring or quests or anything.
Yeah, never change, Japan. Never change.
So, so they moved beyond like doing direct D&D things. Now they're doing offshoots of it because it's been so prominent. At least that's my analysis of it. That's my guess. I don't know enough about it to absolutely, with utter certainty, say that, but just based on what's at least been popular in the US, what I've heard people talking about, it seems that way. I could be wrong. I'm welcome. Anybody who wants to correct me, that's fine. I will take your corrections. So those are some of the discussions in the bro space I've noticed on Twitter over the last few days, and they have been really interesting. I've been very happy to pick them up and run with them.
Best discussion happens on RPG Twitter. We got the best people here, including Macho Man Delph. Hey, glad you made it. And Bradford Walker's also listening in. And Simon Hogwood. Hey, watch these guys. Listen to these guys. If you don't follow them on Twitter, I don't know. I don't know what you're doing with your life. BradfordCWalker.blogspot.com. Go there. You will find good information, like Daddy Warpig has regaled us with.
Oh, and there has been I did a post about Bronsteins on the Geek Gab blog on Saturday. So you might want to go check that out. It's about sparkling Brosteins or real Bronsteins, talking about people who said the bros weren't allowed to run real Bronsteins because we weren't David Wesley. And I kind of disassemble that argument. So,
for those of you hanging out on YouTube, I'll put that link up for you. That's right. You can't call it a Bronstein. It's a sparkling diplomacy.
Okay, but that's it. And I'm hoping to get up another post for tomorrow morning. I have been really working hard yesterday and today, and so things are. I didn't have time to write a post today.
That's all right. We'll let it slide this time. But yeah, no, it's been a good chat. Talked about bunch of different geeky stuff today. I loved it. Thanks to everybody who's hanging out live. I gave you shout outs a minute ago. And I hope everybody listening later either knows to go see Alien or run screaming. Do something else.
Yeah, and if it sounds at all interesting to you, check out Impact Winter. If that stuff sounds too annoying to enjoy it, don't. It's a qualified recommendation.
Got it.
The one thing I keep on wishing for is that the Harry Potter series will do a fully voiced audiobooks, because they have enough money to do it. They have enough money to dramatize the audiobooks with different actors doing different voices and sound effects and things like that.
And it sounds like the sort of thing that you wonder, wait, haven't they already done that? But they haven't.
They haven't.
Wow.
Dune has. The one on the Dune audiobook is a full production. Not Harry Potter.
Huh. Go figure.
I would think that would be so unbelievably popular that you couldn't calculate how much money it would make.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, I think that's about it for the week. Good and chatting with you, DW.
All right. Time for me to take us out?
Please.
All right, folks, this has been Geek Gab for Monday, August 19th, 2024. I want to thank everyone who listened live. I want to thank everyone who tuned in and listen later. We are here just about every Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on youtube.com/geekgab. Once again, that's youtube.com/geekgab. We're also available on the iTunes store, on soundcloud.com, and on the Google Play Store. Just do a search for Geek Gab, subscribe to us on the device of your choice, download us to computer, or listen to us on the web. Please feel free to click the bell icon and click subscribe, and also click like if you enjoyed our show. Folks, we are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.